welcome back to another episode of the Tech Talks Daily podcast, where for the last few days I've been dashing around the show floor trying to make the most of having the privilege of being at an in-person tech conference here in Chicago. And I do consider it my responsibility to share as many voices as I can here, so you get an idea of what everybody's talking about and the kind of technologies that some of the biggest brands in the world are exploring. And after watching a mind-blowing keynote from Paige O'Neill from Sitecore about a metaverse without a headset, straight afterwards I went to the crowded Meta demo booth to find out a little more. And as I tried to tempt Ashwin Manpali, Global Director Industry Strategy and Marketing for Automotive and Manufacturing, away from the booth, there were so many potential clients tugging at his clothes trying to secure a little of his time. But luckily, I managed to grab him for 10 minutes. So if you're interested in finding more about what a metaverse without the barrier entry of a headset would look like, buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to Chicago to speak with him directly on the show floor at Symposium 2022, all without the hassle of having to line up at the busy show booth. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Absolutely. My name is Ashwin, and I lead the automotive and manufacturing practices here at Sitecore.
Fantastic. So here we are at Symposium in Chicago, and there will be people listening all over the world. And one of the reasons I dragged you away from the show floor was after seeing your talk on the metaverse. So for anyone that's missed that and not seen it online, could you just give me a brief overview of everything that you revealed?
Sure. So on the floor, we revealed a virtual dealership experience. And what the idea here is you have someone just with the aid of their computer, no 3D goggles, nothing specific in terms of the purchases that the customer has to make, to enter a virtual showroom floor and interact with a person who can answer their questions about what the vehicle is and kind of go through that entire buying process. And we were able to facilitate that in the virtual world. The values to the automotive community are very kind of stark there, because you don't have to spend all of your time in the dealership. You can get them in the space, have them answer all of these questions, and you can get them faster to buying the vehicle. So that's what we tried to do with the Triumph demo.
And you've probably blown a lot of people's minds there, because if I was to ask most people listening, what does the metaverse mean to you? There's a lot of hype around it. Straight away, they're thinking of headsets, strapping things to their face. So how's that been greeted here when you tell people, actually, for a metaverse experience, you don't need a headset? And can you also probably tell me a little bit about why you don't need a headset, you think?
Absolutely. You and I were having this conversation before we recorded this, and the idea is, when people think of the metaverse, they think of this completely alien land. And the passport to getting this place, the entry fee, is a really expensive headset or a really powerful sort of like gaming dedicated laptop. Well, we want to make this place easy to visit, not only easy to visit, but also a place that can drive real business. In order to make that happen as a strategy, we realized earlier on with some of our partners that if you have to put these things on or buy these peripherals, that's a no-go starter for anyone else. So the best way, and I think the pandemic has sort of rewired behavior in this sense, is that people are used to just kind of getting on a computer and just having a Teams conversation, right? We wanted to bring that same level of ease and flexibility when you're considering buying a vehicle, checking out a new home, or want some questions about a new, boat that you're buying, or whatever else the use case may be. So we wanted to make sure that customer behavior wasn't altered. And that's why we chose to work with great partners such as TouchCast and Microsoft.
And straight away, what that means to me is you've lowered the barrier of entry, not only for businesses, but also for users as well. And the success of any technology is always about increasing mainstream adoption, isn't it? So can you just walk me through how it works and who you're working with?
So this metaverse, this mystical land that we're all headed towards, no one organization can build it, because there's so many unanswered questions. There's so many things that we have to figure out as a community and as an organization. So the way I like to think about it is, let's go find the best in breed in terms of, let's start with the customer problem first. figure out what we need to do in order to solve them. In this case, the dealership experience that can be virtualized. And once we have that at each station, this is going to sound really silly, but I take out a notebook and I just kind of write S for Sitecore, M for Microsoft, T for TouchCast, A for Anata. So it's just really about just thinking deeply about how we pick the partners in this space. And we've been really lucky to partner with the best on this one. And it's all seamlessly talking to each other because of our composable sort of philosophy in terms of how we're able to deliver this.
And I suppose for any business leaders listening, their first question is going to be, okay, so what is the business value? What is this going to deliver to my business? 3
simple words: sell more cars. And that's what we're thinking about the virtual dealership experience, right? Which is that if you're able to increase the velocity of conversations that you're having with this channel, the Metaverse channel, you're able to get more people interested, more people qualified, disqualified, whatever else it is. You can not only boost your conversion rates up, you can shrink the physical plant of what a dealership looks like if you're a dealer. Because you don't have to carry all these vehicles on your inventory because you know what people are interested in, and you can get things much more around like, I need to press the accelerator. So it's about how do you accelerate that? That's the business value. Sell more cars, increase the velocity of transactions, increase your conversions.
So I'm going to ask you to look into your virtual crystal ball here. And I know there's been a lot of talk about this already, but how do you see the future of commerce in the metaverse?
I think the idea is that the future is taking a step back and trying to put more humanity and empathy into this picture. Because we could have just as easily, as a business decision working with the folks at TouchCast, said like, hey, we're going to put some avatars, some guy with a funny unicorn or something else like that. Like, we could have said that. But what the past 2 years have taught us is a fundamental kind of question, which is that you need to put a human person talking through Teams or something else like that in order to make this work. Because what is every act of commerce really about? It's about trust. Yeah. Me saying that this is going to work and you trusting me that it is going to work. And the only way to do that is to putting that human in the mix somewhere along the line. And so if I were to take a look at what the future could look like, it's not going to be completely like bots selling to other bots and like some sort of gigantic stock exchange where algorithms are running everything. But there's going to be a human aspect to it. And there's going to be a certain slowness to it. That's granted. But there's an incredible amount of empathy to it. And that's how it has to be done.
And before we started recording today, I approached you at your show booth, and there's a lot of people around, and getting you away from that show booth was quite tricky because of how popular you were. But I'm curious, if you were to take all the conversations you've had over the last few days, were there any trends in the kind of reactions and the kind of questions that people have been asking?
So the most common question is, when can we have that? So putting that aside, I think the most common questions that we're starting to receive around is like, they see the use case and it's just not this one point solution, right? It's the end-to-end solution. That's what they're interested in. And I talked about this a little bit earlier in terms of customers want us as advisors, not just selling them technology or selling them this line of code, but just help them solve their business problems. So once they're talking about this, they start asking questions about like, hey, how does this work with a DMS system? How does this work with, personalization? How does this work with, order management, all of this stuff? And that really encourages us because we've done all the hard yards earlier on and thinking about how we put that together. And when we approach it from that end-to-end solution, that just accelerates the pace of the question. So it's like there's nothing better in life than know the question someone is going to ask you, and you just know, I know it right away.
So from people either watching the event online, seeing videos on YouTube, or right here, seeing the presentation, the first thing they're going to think is, well, I want to create an experience like that. I need to build an experience like that. So how much work is involved? What kind of time and et cetera does it take for a brand listening to create an experience like we've seen here?
It depends. And I know that's an unsatisfactory answer, but it depends because each customer has different use cases. And going into third dimension obviously has great rewards, but there's also kind of like content costs associated with that. There's a way of thinking about all of this. And what we want to do is sit down with someone listening who's interested in this to think about what a very quick time to value solution can look like in terms of like, hey, let's crawl. What does crawling look like? What kind of KPIs do you want to hit? That I think can be done in a very time-bound fashion. And time-bound, I'm talking about like, say, and this is a rough ballpark, maybe a month or two and so on. But if you want to kind of build that bigger and bigger, obviously it kind of grows linearly associated with the time expectation there.
And that's a problem that many businesses make, isn't it? That they go straight into solution mode, straight into shiny technology. I want that, and not about what do we want to achieve at the end of it all.
I would rather start small and figure out our way through the end.
And what have you enjoyed most about Symposium and your time you've spent here? When you leave here and you get on that plane ride home, what are you going to be thinking about?
The number one thing that I think about is, and it ties back to our theme of like, what is the human connection? I've seen these people since I've been here as like little windows on a Teams channel or something else like that. Now I'm seeing them in flesh and blood, and there's a beauty to it because that echo is going to stay with me. And now I've seen a real person, the people that I worked with, the people that we've solved really challenging been in challenging situations with. And I hope we can take that same spirit into our vision of what we're trying to build with the metaverse.
And if we look at every single person you've spoke to, whether they be from the stage to the people in the audience or people you spoke one-on-one, what's that one thing you want them to walk away with?
It's like the future is happening now. Yeah. And not only is the future happening now, I really want to just de-hype this M word, metaverse. Yeah. And I want to tell them like, this is a business tool. And it's a business tool that the challenges that you're facing in the industry, interest rates fluctuating, economic slowdown, possible economic slowdown, we can help you address those with something like this because it's a deflationary force. I want people to think of those kinds of things. I don't want people to think of this as a fad or like something we're plugging because we just want cool stuff on screen.
So if anyone wants to find out more information about anything we talked about today, or maybe they want to contact you or your team, what's the best starting point?
Find me on LinkedIn and we can start a conversation.
Two things stood out for me at the show booth here, and that is automotive companies were creating metaverse experiences without the need for them or their consumers to use a headset. They've completely removed that entry point, that friction point. And secondly, the crowds and interests around this approach, around the metaverse, really made me think about that there is a real interest around this right now. And very often I spend a lot of time writing about this world, and I do have to rein myself in thinking maybe it's more for the future and the appetite isn't there yet, the technology isn't there yet. But seeing the crowds and interest around this approach really was food for thought. But what do you think? Where do you see the metaverse heading? It is such a big topic. And before I came here, it was for me, it was more about which headset is it? Is it going to be an AR headset when that reaches the mainstream? Or is it going to be the VR headset? But is that too immersive for mainstream audiences? But this week, I've seen another approach here without the need for a headset. But as I said, what are your thoughts? I'd love to hear your opinions on everything that you've heard today and combine that with everything that you've read and seen before listening to today's episode. So as always, email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com. We'll keep this conversation going. I also have 2 great interviews with Cirque du Soleil and Jacuzzi coming up about their digital transformation initiatives too. But keep your emails coming in. We'll keep this conversation going. And I'll speak to you all again tomorrow. So thank you for listening as always. And until next time, don't be a stranger.